Welcome on a glorious Monday afternoon to Diplomatic Passport here on Zim Papers Television Network, where we give you daily weekday updates on COVID-19 and, of course, all things that you're interested in this new era of a new normal as we battle this pandemic that is COVID-19. My name is Robin Kodiwa. Today I'm going to be discussing everything from trade to reggae music, so stay tuned because we've got a lot lined up. But before we get into the nitty-gritties of today's show, as always, I'll start by giving you our standing as a nation with regards our statistics on COVID-19 as availed to us by the Ministry of Health and Childcare. So Zimbabwe now has 8,276 confirmed cases of coronavirus, including 237 deaths and 7,797 recoveries, which puts the national recovery rate at 94%, or rather keeps it there. Now, 816 PCR tests were done in the last 24 hours. And of course, of those, 7 new cases were recorded. These are all local transmission cases. Harare is still the epicenter with 3,304 cases, followed by Bulawayo, which now has 1,615 cases of COVID-19. Now, I'm sad to report that we have, over the past 24 hours, also recorded a death. And of course, our hearts keep going out, and we keep saying, let us not be complacent, because as much as we're doing a really decent job in dealing with COVID-19, the dangers are real and present. To the rest of Africa now, where a growing number of African countries have begun to ease COVID-19 related regulatory restrictions. Now, some countries such as Kenya, Rwanda and Senegal resumed international flights in August, while other countries like South Africa and Nigeria are only now opening their borders. Now, the reopening is a welcome step towards restoring economic growth across Africa, seeing that the start of programs like the African Continental Free Trade Area, the AfCFTA, was postponed due to the coronavirus. And this is something we're going to be looking at today, because experts believe that the pandemic could help give the ambitious free trade project a boost. Measured by the number of countries, the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA, is to become the largest free trade zone in the world. 55 states, 1.3 billion people, a gross domestic product of 3.4 trillion United States dollars. Now, these are the basic statistics for the AfCFTA once it is officially launched. Now, since the supply chain was disrupted by the pandemic and the market dried up, especially in the field of medical protective equipment, African states had to figure out how to help themselves. Now, experts believe that the situation has created the spirit for more cooperation, creating opportunities for regional integration in Africa. Now, we thought it befitting here on Diplomatic Passport to really look into this issue. So waiting for me on the line is International Trade Center International Coordinator Asayatu Diallo, and she joins me on the line. Asayatu, if you can hear me, welcome to Diplomatic Passport, and it's a pleasure to have you. And just digging deep from the get-go, let us start from the beginning. For the benefit of the viewers, what is the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the AfCFTA, quite wordy, and why is the International Trade Center supporting it?
The purpose of this agreement is to create a single market at the continental level, Africa to become the largest market in the world. Africa is the home, as you know, of 55 member states. And at the moment, we have 1.3 billion of people in Africa. So this is a huge market with a lot of opportunities. So this is why this Africa Continental Free Trade Area has been created, is to help Africa to convert its own potential into concrete, opportunities in terms of employment, opportunities in terms of innovation, opportunities in terms of, finding the best way to fight poverty and to provide income to the women, to the youth, to the most vulnerable people in Africa. So the African Continental Free Trade Area is really, I will say, the way to which Africa is going to grow, and it's the way to which we are going to realize our future. Why now the International Trade Center, ITC, is supporting this initiative? First, please allow me just to recall our mandate. We are a UN technical cooperation agency, and our mandate is really to help micro, small, and medium-sized companies to connect with market opportunities. So it's to help them to increase their competitiveness, to be able to trade more and to trade better. And since this AFCFTA is also about trade, it's about employment, it's about income generation. So we could not, we did not have any choice. We have to support this AFCFTA to make it happen.
Well, certainly it comes at a timely period when we're looking at, of course, depressed figures across the continent with regards even basic employment. And this is something that you're also going to be looking at. But what progress has been made towards moving Africa to a single market? And what sort of timelines are we talking about to realize the goal of regional integration? And of course, have African governments, African countries bought into the AFCFTA?
The discussion started on the African Continental Free Trade Area a long time ago. But I will say that in 2012, there was a summit in Addis Ababa where they decided that, this Continental Free Trade Area should be put in place. And the negotiation started in 2015. So you can see that there were a good political momentum. The African member states were very supportive. But of course, to make this single market to happen, it cannot happen like that. It's not like you sit together, you negotiate, and then, you remove all the barriers and trade is happening. As you know, it's not like that. Because when you talk about the single market, you have to talk about removing the barriers. You have to talk about free movement of goods, services, capitals, and also free movement of persons. And we know that this is sometimes even in inside the regional economic community, it's not always easy. So there are many steps that have been taken by the African Union. First of all, what they have done, and I think this is very good and this is really excellent, because what they did is to take a gradual approach, to have a round of negotiations. They started to negotiate first on the protocols of goods and services, how to open the markets on goods and services. That was already done. Of course, there are some issues that are, a little bit technical related to the rules of origin or tariff concession that are still being discussed. But the phase one of the implementation of the single market is completed. The second one will start in January 2021, when the AFCFTA will be officially operationalized, will be officially, taking place. So then they will be negotiating about, investment, because you cannot talk about regional integration, about, having a single market without thinking about investment. That's very important if you want to increase the intra-African trade, investment in infrastructure, investment on value chain, on product development. So investment will be very important to discuss. They are going also to negotiate, intellectual property. Intellectual property is very important for a company that want to review and upgrade, for instance, their business model and come up with some new, way of doing business. How are they going to protect, their new business model? So intellectual property is key. And third, there will be also negotiating competition policy. So the AFCFTA is not happening like that in a second. It's a gradual. It's going through a gradual process. And as I said again, it has started. It will continue.
Certainly, certainly. Now, Mr. Diallo, just I want to take you back a bit. You talked about barriers, and there are a lot of barriers that need to be removed. And certainly COVID-19 has been one of those barriers, and it has literally paralyzed the global economy, with Africa possibly receiving the worst brunt of that pandemic. Now, what lessons have been learned about the COVID-19 induced devastating impact on African economies, and how will the AFCFTA help the continent recover, do you think?
Yeah, maybe something that I have not said, but you know that it's true that the COVID, and this is not only in Africa, it has hit, I mean, the world economy, but of course more in Africa for the reason that we all know. However, I have to say that, as you know, Africa has also has been the continent where they have reported, you know, the lowest infection cases. And as you know, also we can also say that Africa was, I mean, almost prepared, you know, to deal with this crisis, because in our past history, we have been dealing with a number of crises. So we were quite prepared also with this one. So I will say that most governments were able to take and to anticipate and to take measures in order, you know, to address the crisis. We have seen that, for instance, in most countries, they were able to quickly, you know, how can I say, design and produce masks and some personal protective equipment. That was a very good example. We have seen that in some countries, e-commerce has, you know, just expanded. So entrepreneurs were trying to sell their product to online platform, you know, not only in the domestic market, but trying to explore also how to sell, even though the border were closed, it was not easy, but to find a way also to ship their product. So we know that, you know, people have tried, and government also have tried to come up with some solution. But what the AFCFTA is going to provide, the AFCFTA is going to provide a framework where Africa as one is going to identify, in fact, some priorities that they should take in order, you know, to be able to confront, not to confront, but to address this crisis and go beyond. For instance, the AFCFTA is planning to identify key priority value chains to be promoted. You know, how to build continental value chains, how to make sure that in Zimbabwe you are able to sell your product, let's say to DRC Congo, but also to Morocco, because that will be one market. To do this, not only when there is a crisis, but even when the situation is, you know, being normal. And this is what the AFCFTA is going to provide, because, as I said, barriers will be removed. There will be a free movement of goods and services. And I think that this is already an asset for the continent if it happens, because it will make people to be able to move and to sell their product, and of course to increase their turnover, not people, but the micro, small and medium-sized companies, to increase their turnover and be able to increase their turnover means what? Means that in principle they will be able to hire more people, and of course to increase the number of people that are working with them with a positive effect on employment at the country level, but also at the regional level.
Ms. Diallo, I see there's quite a lot of ground to cover when we talk of the role of the AFCFTA, and of course we shall be engaging you in future to tap into your knowledge and other such issues. But perhaps finally, why has the AFCFTA placed small and medium-sized enterprises with a particular focus on women and youth at the front and center of Africa's economic recovery?
Africa is, as you know, the continent with the largest youth population. So we must use them. We cannot leave them without any jobs. Some of them could be working for, you know, micro, small and medium-sized companies, while others could be just entrepreneurs. In Africa, they have brilliant ideas. They have brilliant ideas. How to help them to convert these brilliant ideas into a concrete and bankable project that could help them to run their own business. There is no need for everyone to go and work for government. There is no need for everyone to go and work for, a multinational. Some young people, they are very talented in Africa. They could just, from their own idea, they just need to get some support to be able to craft their idea, to come up with a project, to have a good business plan, be able to find the right bank. And this is important, access to finance to help them to materialize their project and be able to sell their idea and be able, to be their own boss, so that, they have a job. Because at the end of the day, what is important is to alleviate poverty. How do you alleviate poverty if you don't give an opportunity to the ones that are suffering to get a job? To get a job, why? Because you need to have some income, but not only for that, also for your self-esteem. This is very important. And I think this is what the AFCFTA is going to provide, a future, a perspective, an opportunity to use trade as an engine, to use the intra-African trade as an engine to grow, as a vehicle to grow, and to make those young people, young men, young women, to become entrepreneurs, or to be hired by, as I said, by companies that are operating in various areas on agriculture, agribusiness, services. This is key. And this is why at ITC we do have a program which is called the Partnership for One Trade Africa. This program is about empowering, enabling and enhancing the participation of micro, small and medium-sized companies into the AFCFTA, and also supporting young men, young women entrepreneurs so that they can, be able to trade and to trade more in Africa.
Assatou Diallo, thank you so much for joining me, and we've been very privileged to hear you and your passionate work that you're doing there at the ITC, and certainly we hope to be hearing more and more from you as we run towards at least launching this. And it's interesting that you would end by saying young people ought to be have their own destiny in their hands, because straight after this we're going to be seeing one young Zimbabwean who's also got his own job as his own boss. Assatou Diallo there joining us from on Skype rather, talking passionately as the ITC representative on free trade in Africa, something that of course has long been overdue. And she said this, she said stuff today that touched our hearts the most, and spoke about how young people need to be their own boss. Well, we've got a gentleman coming up who's going to be his own boss. Is Gaspi Warrior, an amazing name in the arts. And of course we also talk about how the arts ought to be an industry in itself. And before we engage him and have him here on Diplomatic Passport, let's see one of his works that he has churned out for us as he builds his very great and elaborate discography.
Yeah, 19 again and again. Yeah. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. 19. Yeah. Wakandidadira ndichirirombe. Uchindiseka ndichipa kumombe. Ukandidira mvura tiri kutsime. Pandaisuva kutaura newe, takanga ndozvishora ndichiti pamwe, takaremara chiso zvese neomwe, ndichiti komusikisei koma ndipasiso rinoona zvisi zvangu asi zvevamwe, waikaroti chose kana uchida zvangu enda unosenga gomo uye naro, ndiwe waiti chose kana uchida zvangu enda unotwara musasa paruware, ndiva pawakandipilivisa ndikati takudana na zvangu zvaita ukandisekanesa mwari dzako ndakuikira maruva uchiti chose ndaitamba waiva moyo wangu wawaikika kuita fanika pane chandakatadza ndipo pakabva shungu dzangu mukusekwa nemukutukwa nhasi wakundidaro wani waiti chose 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 kana utida zvangu enda unosenga gomo uye naro ndiwe waiti chose 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 kana utida zvangu enda unodzvara musasa paruware ota kusasa ndipinzire foni handichadane zvako tawakuda pandiri nanhasi masini handichadane zvako ndapota usasa ndipinzire foni handichadane zvako tawakuda pandiri nanhasi masini handichadane zvako wani waiti chose 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 kana utida zvangu enda unosenga gomo uye naro.
Well, there you have it. That's Jose. That's a great track building the discography of the man who joins me today on Diplomatic Passport, Gusby Warrior. And it's been a long time coming, and a lot of you actually engaged me on Twitter and said, we want Gusby, and we've got Gusby. Gusby Warrior, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Now, before we get back, because I'm going to have a little back and forth with you.
Okay.
When you broke out with So No Nonga, that was probably the second most sung song, only second to the national anthem, and only because in the national anthem, students and pupils are expected to sing it every morning. So the only song that they sang effortlessly and without being made to sing was So Nonga. How was that? You know, here you're coming on board and you expect to have something a bit lukewarm, you know, because you're learning the ropes, you're starting, and then boom, it explodes.
It was a lot to swallow, I can tell you that. Well, for me, it was a turning point, I should say, because looking at it from my own perspective, I was not that famous at that moment, and obviously when you're in the studio you're trying to be famous, but you really don't know what it is to be famous. And from that song, So No Nonga, I can't even hide in a face mask.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But well, it's been a great journey. You know, that song made a very, you know, good landmark for myself, because when I look back in time, it was, I think, 2012. Up until now, whenever I sing that song in my shows, people like it, and to me that means a lot. Just them liking my music, even way after it's been hitting on radio stations and almost on every radio, car radio, MP3 player, you know. Yeah.
And it had its own connotations, you know. The dance, the So No Nonga is pretty much twerking, but on a more on a hotter level, if I should say so.
Yeah, maybe on a homely basis as well, because you know, like back in the days we had Kongonya. It's close to that.
And you know, people, and this is something that you cannot run away from. You are like in the shadow of a great man. You are in the shadow of Baba Mechanic Manyeruki. And you know, that this is something you've been asked repeatedly. And you are probably beginning to sound like a broken record. But how did you handle that? You know, because this song has got that Kongonya connotation, and then there's Dad, who's an absolute maverick in gospel music and
like
a legend.
And white, right?
So exactly. So how did you deal with him listening to that song, and then how do you deal with people who are also trying to reconcile? How can this guy be this other guy?
Dealing with him wasn't so much of a problem, because he's an artist. He understands art. That this is a dance song. It's different from my type of music, but it's a song. Okay?
Did he ever sing along to it in your here?
Mfana song ya kwe my show. Was exact. Those were his exact words. Like, every time I go on to perform, people say, we want So No Nonga, we want So No Nonga. So yeah, but dealing with him wasn't like tough, because he's a guy who understands. But dealing with...
I like how you say he's a guy, you know, just a guy. We look at him and we're like, and you're like, he's just that guy.
Yeah, you know, growing up with him from being a tender age up until now, you know, you get to know that it's not so difficult after all, and he's loving, he's accommodative. And he used to come into the studio and tell me, such a voice, and I never knew what that meant. And then, you know, with the experience, started, oh, you know what? I was actually told, don't do this way before, you know, but now I'm starting to get it. So, but then dealing with the people, like you're saying, that was tough. Because people had that mindset that I'm being rebellious. People thought I was just being rude and trying to just go like take another way away from my dad.
This against the grain thing, because also it may have happened a little bit later, but generally this is a musical family which has gone gospel.
True.
Some people will not know that we went to the same school.
Oh, yeah.
And of course we had Alexander, who did well with his sophomore album. It was a beautiful gospel album. And so when people listen to Alex singing gospel and Dara singing gospel, and then you swimming upstream.
You know, it's quite something, because Alex introduced me to dancehall. He's the guy who would come with cassettes home, dancehall music, and that's when it started for me.
And it was because of those Saturday radio sessions.
Yeah,
in school,
you can say that
and
again.
everybody had to dance to that stuff.
You know.
And it kind of built us. But I also think that guy, Mdara, was probably not surprised, because he also mentions the fact that when he thought you had musical blood in you, it's because he had taken you to England as around a 4-year-old.
Yes.
And then you heard Bob Marley in England, and you started grooving along to that. And people don't know that that's when even your father found out that you loved music and you had music in you. But then he found out because you were dancing to reggae.
A reggae song.
And not a gospel song.
So I'm not rebellious.
Of course.
I love reggae and dancehall. From the first time I heard reggae and dance, I felt at home. But remember, I grew up in a musical family where we have drums, guitars everywhere, and speakers. And when I was grade 7, I turned to be an engineer. I was engineering my dad's shows. So I got into the music industry in the back of the stage, where I would just be mixing sound. So I got to learn a lot. But
and I think your dad is hiding somewhere as a lover of reggae too, because
you can say that again.
When I will tell you the story. When there's a string of really hot hits that he released, and you could not sign Mechanic Manyeruge anyway because it was absolutely expensive to get.
Sure.
And then he came as a charitable something to help the choir, Msengezi High Choir, which I was part of, which you know. And he came and says, I'm going to do this for rock bottom amounts of money so that we raise money for the school. And if you listen distinctly to the music he was playing with Isaac Chirwa, it was a 3 or 4 man band. That was the core music. Is reggae music. So
we cannot really run away from reggae, because 1980, when we had an independence, that was a significant time for everybody, and Bob Marley was there. So that turnaround also is still surviving us. Isaac Chirwa is a deep reggae star, you know. So them coming together says it all.
And looking at your own creative processes, how have you then become your own person? Because it's also very difficult to, you know, to try and pick and choose who's me, who's Mechanic, who's Alex, you know. And yet over the years you've morphed into your own person. How have you done it, especially in the creative processes, in your writing? What do you use?
Well, everyday inspirations, everyday life, social commentary. But mostly I like to call myself a musician and not a reggae musician or dancehall musician. I just like to give myself the room, the limitless room, to just do music and try and bring out the Zimbabwean flavor out there internationally. And when I'm writing music, really, what really gets me into the mood is love stories, reading books, movies, and then reality that just goes on day by day. Like, for example, when I sang Jose, I had heard a story from my friend. He was just telling me what happened when they were in Kumusha there. The girl was just, you know, something else. And just hearing that story, I got the inspiration to write that song. So that's what happens in my creativity space.
And you've had a lot of creative space this year because we were all grounded and we had no choice than to tap into our creative juices,
true.
otherwise risk being insane. What have you done with COVID-19 lockdown? How have you changed that sad being closed out into at least time to reflect and become the artist that you are?
Well, it hasn't been a very good time for everybody, but I should say it's been a wake-up call for everybody as well. When I started doing music in 2006, I wanted to be a producer, so I started doing production. But then, when I did So No Longer those days, I then started doing more focus than production. So COVID-19 helped me got back to my production seat, and I've just released a reggae rhythm called Lost Dreams. It's there on YouTube on my channel. People are liking it. It's actually playing in Jamaica right now. It's playing in almost every station right now, so that's something that I'm proud of. And right now I'm working with Bed Company Records in Barry. That's where we're doing our recordings, and I'm back in production again, but I'm not out in recording.
You're not
vocals
out in recording.
as well.
and tell me more about the new work that's coming out. Any of it going to be accompanied by visuals, because we're in a world of videos and,
Most
and
definitely.
all that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with music right now. If you don't put out videos, then the music is gonna sink. So definitely your videos are coming up. We're just shooting another video yesterday with a guy called Mr. Wa. It's called Party. The song is called Party Animals. It's coming soon. We're also shooting another video with Killer T, where we have a collaboration coming soon. Okay. So we're still putting everything together so we can do a music video.
Brilliant. I cannot cease to always go back to those olden days,
sure.
you know, and that's when you were building yourself even from school.
True.
Now tell me, as an artist, who influenced you to become the person that you are in terms of and inspired you, whether they're artists elsewhere, even who are beyond the genre of reggae music?
Well, my dad was a great influence, I should say. Just being around him, you know, the respect that you'd get from people, I would admire it. Like, wow, this guy is a great man, and I wanted to be great like he is. And also Bob Marley. Bob Marley taught me a lot of things, you know. It's funny, I'm from another generation from him, but I get to, you know, get a lot of lessons from the things I used to say in interviews, you know. So he also played a very...
I think Bob Marley is to boys what Princess Diana was to girls.
You can
it's
say
like you
that
grew
again.
Up with like,
yeah.
Oh, Bob Marley, as if you
very
used
relatable guy. With,
very, very.
Yeah, so him, Sizzla Kalonji, and then Winky D, and then Dada D, Sniper Storm, you know, the list is endless. I just get this and this from everybody, you know. You can have a perfect person, but you should always be sure to get something good from everybody.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to, again, your dad. It's inevitable.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first Mechanic Manyeruke show you attended? And what did that do to you? Because when you said you really wanted to be this guy, and you saw that, and it was palpable, and the love. Do you particularly remember the first show?
I remember that show. I think it was some hotel in Hatfield, Arcturus Hotel or something. He was playing with Sifo Makapani. So I think that was my first show when I was upgrown as well. Now knowing what's really going on, man, I had goosebumps all the way. Because people were just singing along each and every song he was performing. That didn't turn me back. I just said, I want to be that guy.
And I want to be better than this guy.
And I'm going to be better than that guy. But wow, reality says it all, man. That guy is a legend.
Absolutely. And the humility, he still remains a person of great humility, regardless of how big he is to us. And he remains one of the last of his generation. We're absolutely blessed to have him. We're absolutely blessed to have you too, Gaspy Warrior. And certainly would want to see the new material come through. And your diplomatic passport is always going to be waiting for you here, and we want to see more and more of you and the discipline that you exhibit. It's been a long time. You're still this very humble guy, and it's something we also appreciate.
Well, I want to thank you for having me, and I mean, I'm my father's son. So one or the other will be so much close together. You
certainly are, and I will tell you, he's shared his first show, my first show with Mechanic Manyeruke happened to be in 1988.
Wow.
And it was an amazing show. And the good thing is, the humble man that he is, of course, he was playing with something called the Holy Spirit's Choir. And of course, just after him, the Holy Spirit's Choir came on, and I think they came on before he even finished playing, as was the tradition back then. I will tell you, he did not kick them off. He kept them, and he was very nice to them. And I think that's the son he has also raised. Gospel Warrior, always a pleasure, and this is not the last time we're seeing you.
Thank you so much, Mkoma.
And thank you for being with us here on this Monday, where we went all over from the rest of the continent, from Senegal, South Africa, and of course, we finished here in Zimbabwe thanks to Gospel Warrior. And some of you have been writing to us and saying, well, why did you fade off Jose? Because I think it's also a track that you guys are really smitten by. And because of that, I will leave you watching it. But don't forget to get in touch with me on my Twitter handle at Zimrobbie, that's ZIMROBBIE. And of course, let's keep the conversation going. You asked for Gospel Warrior there, you got him. Ask for whosoever you want, and certainly we'll make that dream come true. Jose will play you out.
Yeah, 19 again and again. Yeah. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. 19, yeah. Wakandidadira ndichirirombe, uchindiseka ndichipa kumombe, ukandidira mvura tiri kutsime, pandaisuva kutaura newe, ndakanga ndozvishora ndichiti pamwe, ndakaremara chiso zvese neomwe, ndichiti komusikisei komandipa ziso rinoona zvisi zvangu asi zvevamwe, waigaroti Jose, 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 kana uchida zvangu enda unosenga gomo uye naro, ndiwe waiti Jose, 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 kana uchida zvangu enda unotsvara musasa paruware, uchaziva pawakandibhilivhisa ndikati takudanana zvangu zvaita, ukandiseka neshamwari dzako ndakuikira maruva uchiti chose ndaitamba, waiva moyo wangu wawaikika kuita fanika pane chandakatadza, ndipo pakabva